Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present to you today my master's thesis, especially on this day. It's a project that I'm conducting between the University of Bologna and IPES in Tarragona, and it's a project that aims at looking into vegetation cover changes at the end of the Pleistocene in Sicily, and also look at how this new landscape was used by hunter-gatherer communities. So we're looking at a territory that is, I cannot change. There we go. We are looking at a territory that is Sicily, so situated in the middle of the Mediterranean. It is a very diverse territory with, you can see on the map, a wide range of different geomorphological areas. So mountains in the north, in the coasts, some plains, and in the inlands, very hilly landscapes, which of course, all of these coming with their own sets of vegetation and fauna. It is also a territory that was vastly reshaped at the end of the Pleistocene, with generally rising temperatures and rising precipitation, which caused a really big augmentation of forest covers across Sicily. We can see it on the right side of the graph here. So really an abrupt transition between a more open landscape and a more arboreal rich landscape. The first signs of human occupation in Sicily are dated between the middle and the upper Pleistocene, and today we are focusing on one specific site. It's a cave called San Teodoro on the northern coast. It has yielded one of the oldest and the biggest actually human assemblages of Sicily to this day, with a total of at least 7 individuals, all that have been attributed to the late Gravettian. And it's a site that has been tremendously excavated actually since the 19th, so the end of the 19th century. And it's more or less 2 phases, two different assemblages have been identified by archaeologists. On one side, really layers that are able to give us really good insights into faunal assemblages of the late Upper Pleistocene, and then later on layers of human occupation with two specific periods that were identified, which correspond to different kinds of usage of the space. In the older layers, they correspond more to the layers where human remains were found, it's more connected to funerary use of the space. And then later on, in the most recent Upper Pleistocenic layers, you have Upper Paleolithic layers, you have a more usage that is more probably related to butchering activities, so a lot of deposition. In the excavation of 2021, a small area in the cave was found to have a really relatively untouched stratigraphy, and this is the area that we are studying in this project, and it corresponds to this butchering phase that I talked about just before. So what we are doing in this work is that we are doing some anthracological analysis, so looking at charcoals and their meanings in archaeological contexts. It is important to note that for that kind of proxy, it's really important to have a good sampling strategy, because charcoals generally don't talk for themselves. So we need to have a really good idea of the space in which we find them. So what we did is that we sampled sediment from the excavation area that went through flotation and sieving. And then once the charcoals were obtained, we analyzed them. They went through anatomical observation in order for us to be able to identify them. Yes. One important thing to note when during the process of analysis is that the state of preservation of these fragments, they can, when it's bad, they can really make it difficult for us to identify the taxa. but they can also give us really insights into, for example, firing techniques or dynamics. In that case, our assemblage was in pretty good condition, since only 14.2% of the fragments were showing signs of bad preservations that you can mainly see through a presence of cracks and vitrification. And on to the preliminary results now. Here you have a graph visualizing 3 layers that we sampled, and more or less we can see that they are quite homogeneous. Throughout these layers, only 6 different taxa was found, so relatively low diversity, low amounts of species found. We can see a really big predominance of Acer, Quercus, and Maloidea, which is an interesting point to keep in mind. And then we also have the presence of Rhamnus and Fagus and Juniperus. So these preliminary results, for now, they enable us to already think about some implications regarding the environment. So, for example, the presence of oaks and Acer, which are maple trees, and Maloidea, they really point towards the presence of a very, like, a forest, and which could have been present, yes, on top of the cave at bigger, like at higher altitudes. And then we have the presence also in the assemblage of Rhamnus and Juniperus, which are shrubby plants, which tend to point towards a more open landscape. An really important and really interesting point here is that we, for the first time, see the presence of Fagus sylvatica in the archaeobotanical assemblage in Sicily. And this could make us think that actually this species survived in Sicily throughout the glacial period, and then was able to recolonize Europe from Sicily onto the north. Regarding humans' use of the landscape, well, we noticed that there is a very low diversity in the taxa that was probably taken and used for fire, but at the same time, taxa that also comes from really different types of ecological habitats. And from that point, we can, it kind of points towards the fact that people were probably using an extensive part of the landscape around them, while probably having preferences, either because these species were more available in bigger quantities, or because they actually had some subjective selection, maybe related to firing properties. A paper that was published last year actually also put forward a similar observation of a diversification of the use of the territory. This paper looks at more diet of hunter-gatherer societies, but yes, observes that more taxa was involved in the diet. So yes, I think for leaving just only for a few conclusions and remarks for the future, this work is probably one of the first works that is looking at human and forest relationships in Italy at that specific time of rapid change. And it is also very interesting in terms of not only related to archaeology, but for plain biogeography, it's actually really relevant, especially with this appearance of Fagus sylvatica. And in the future, we would like to, of course, extend our assemblage with more charcoal fragments from different contexts, maybe other periods or other sites in Sicily, and maybe conduct a geobotanical analysis in order to understand a bit more the patterns of distribution of the plants around the caves. And with that said, I would like to thank everyone that helped me during this presentation, especially Claudia SPECIALE, and all of you for your attention. Thank you very much.